Hey everyone, in this video we're going to talk about Xcode, the IDE or integrated development environment that we're going to use to learn Objective-C. And eventually, if you want to build Mac OS apps or iOS apps. We're going to open up Xcode. If you don't have Xcode, watch the previous video in this series. It'll show you how to download it either from the App Store or from the web browser. Let's open up Xcode. Right now, we're prompted with this screen. These are some of the projects I've been working on. You might not see anything because you've just downloaded Xcode and have no recent projects. We're going to get started with a new Xcode project, so let's click that. Alright, now we have an interesting screen here. It's giving us a lot of different options. You see I have Mac OS command line tool. That's what we're going to select, but first let me talk about what the screen is showing us. It's showing us a whole bunch of different template applications. So if I wanted to build a game for tvOS, I would click this. What it would give me is some code to start with, some template code that gets me started in the right direction in building a game for tvOS. Same thing for iOS. If I wanted to build an app and it was going to be page-like, there was going to be a page structure, I might want to start off with this page-based application. But I don't need any of that. We don't need any of that. We're just learning, so we're going to have some bare bones command line tool application. Let's go ahead and click Mac OS command line tool and next. Okay, new screen here. Basically asking us to give our project a name. I'm just going to name it Xcode because we're going to be learning about Xcode. Team, you can give it your own name. Organization name, you can make this up. Right now, don't be too concerned about these things. You don't really have an organization. Unless you do, then you could put that. But write that here, and then your organization identifier, which is the backwards domain name with your organization name, and then the bundle identifier. Like I said, don't pay too much attention to this, just give it a name. You can follow this format, and obviously we want Objective-C because that's the language that we're learning. We'll click Next. You can save it wherever you'd like. I'll save it right here. And now we're in Xcode. The first thing I want to say about Xcode now that we're in here is there are a lot of tools. There is a lot going on in this software and in this IDE, so I just want you to know that. Don't get overwhelmed. We're going to learn one thing at a time. It's going to take a very long time for you to understand what every single setting and switch and customization does. So bear with me and just take your time in learning what everything is. Don't get frustrated if you don't understand what so many different things say or mean. First thing I'll mention here is on the left panel here. This is our project. This is the application we're building, and this is the file structure of that application. So pretty much all our application consists of right now is this main file. Let's go into this main file. Okay, now we're actually looking at some code. One thing you might have noticed is my screen probably looks a lot different than yours. It's dark and the font is small. We can change this, and I'm going to change this for the purpose of teaching. So we'll go to Xcode in the top left, and we'll go to Preferences. Xcode Preferences. Here you see fonts and colors. I have it set to dusk. That's what I like using, but I'm going to use Presentation for these tutorials, which is bigger text on a white background. You can make plenty of custom setups. You can make it yellow. You can make the font huge, tiny, however you like it. So just be yourself, pick what you want, and whatever works for you. Okay, now that we're in this preferences, there's a few other things here. Actually, not a few other things. There's a lot of other things, but keep in mind with Xcode, we don't have to understand everything at once. So let's go right into text editing. Two things I want to make sure that you have highlighted here are line numbers and code folding ribbons. I like to use both of these, and for this tutorial, I'm going to use both of these. Let's check them off. And what they're doing is here on the left, oh, actually I still have this yellow background. So let me go to Presentation, Text Editing. If I click line numbers, you can see this index and this gutter on the left. They'll go away. I want to make sure they're there. That way I can point to a specific line and know which line that I'm talking about. And then the code folding ribbon is this line right here. You can see this gray shadow. If I click that, it goes away. I'm going to show you why that's important in a little bit. So let's just have both of them on. Some people prefer to not have them on, but for purposes of this tutorial and for my preferences, I like to have them on. Let's get out of this. The code folding ribbon If I hover over it, it just shows where a specific line of code, where a block of code starts and ends. So I have one chunk of code that's embedded in another chunk of code. We'll get to what this all means later, but I like to know where my code starts and ends. If you accidentally click here, it'll fold all the code. Don't worry, it didn't go away. There were times when I was writing a big chunk of code when I was first learning, and I would do this and I'd be very worried that everything I was just typing had just disappeared, but it just folded it up. You can go ahead and click it again and it'll all come back. Now, like we said, this is where your code is. This is the text editor of Xcode. So this is where you're going to be doing most of your work when it comes to coding, right here in the middle. Let's talk about this right panel over here. We won't be using this for a while. In fact, in this tutorial series, you might not have to use it much at all. Usually you're going to use this right panel when you're programming for a particular platform like an iOS app, a tvOS app, or what have you. You have some object libraries here, code snippets. You might want to use these code snippets, and there's this question mark, which is quick help. You can hover over something and it might tell you what that particular thing is. So if I hover over nslog, it's going to tell me a little bit about nslog. Pretty much for our purposes, that's what we want it for, just some quick help on what something in our code is doing and what it does, which is right here. You can even click these links to go to the Apple references. Another thing I want to talk about that's over here on the right is right above this right panel, this two circles that kind of looks like a drunken Venn diagram. If you click that, you'll just have something called the assistant editor, where you have two code files at one point in time. Right now we really only have this main file, so it wouldn't really make sense. We're not going to use this much at all in the tutorial series. The real time it's useful is when you're maybe using some sort of user interface file here and it relates to your code, so you want to see both at once. But we're not going to have to use this much at all. I just want you to know it's there. If you accidentally click it, you can just exit out right here in the top right. So we're back to our one code file, which is our main.m file. Another thing I want to talk about are these toggle switches. In the top right, you see these three squares with bars inside of them. What they do is show and hide particular panels in Xcode. There's one panel that's been missing this whole time, which is the bottom, the debug area. And we can hide that right panel. And now that the debug area has come up, we can see that we can even hide both of these. And I want to tell you what these are. This is the console to the bottom right. If you're printing anything, if you're logging anything out, you're going to see it here. Also, a lot of the errors will pop up here, what the particular error is. And this left side is the debugging area, which we'll talk about much later, but this is one of the tools you're going to use to fix any bugs that are in your code. So the main purpose of all these toggle switches are just, it can get pretty cumbersome to have all these panels there at once, and it gets frustrating to work in that type of environment. So maybe if you're working only in the code file and you're just typing up some code that you know about, you can hide everything and just work here. And then when you're ready, you bring them back. It's just a way to kind of control the real estate of the screen and customize your work environment. Alright, so this is a command line application, and I want to talk a little bit about the generated code that appears when you start a command line application. Like I said, when we select a command line application, we're getting some sort of template code. If we were to click a game for iOS, we get some template code for that. But we click command line, this is what we get. On the top, from lines 1 through 7, you'll see some commented out text. This gets generated when you make a new project. It has the name of my project, my name, a copyright statement. That's that. You'll see that in every time you start a new project, you'll have that commented out text there. It has nothing to do with the operation of our program. It is just there for human eyes to read. It's commented out. And when you see this commented out text color plus these two forward slashes denote a comment. So the compiler doesn't read this text. On line 9, you'll see this import statement. They're common and important to understand in Objective-C. What this says is we're importing a particular library or framework, and that is Foundation. Foundation gives us a lot of the Objective-C functionality, and it's pretty much essential to have in your Objective-C program. On line 11, you'll see this main function. If you've used C-based languages before, you know about C-based language, you'll be familiar with this concept, but main is where our program starts. This is the function that tells our program, hey, we're starting here. So that's what main is. It's giving our program a starting point. That's all we really need to know for right now. The next line, you'll see auto release pool. This has to do with memory management. And it's also something that we don't have to delve too deep into right now. We'll talk about it later. But just know that this has to do with managing the memory of your program. And 13 and 14 is our main function. And this is more commented out code. So you have these two forward slashes, meaning that this is not read by our program. It's not read by the compiler. And then the next line, which is our actual program, we're logging hello world to the console. So whenever we want to build and run our program, you'll see in the top left this play button. We're going to click that. Build succeeded. And on the console, you'll see hello world, because that's what this line of code does. 14, it logs out a statement. This is a string. We'll get into strings later, to the console. This is the console down here. We can hide it, show it. And let's say we were to comment out this insert code here and try to build and run that code. It's going to fail because the compiler doesn't understand this line insert code here, because it was never meant to be in our program. It's supposed to be commented out just to tell us that's where we're going to write our code. We see error warnings here. Can click these. We'll get more into what these are later, but that's the basics of a command line application. And the majority of this tutorial series is going to be done within a command line application. So just know how to create one and how to work within it. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.